Welcome back to the channel. Today we are doing my January reads recap video. As you can see, I made my little homemade boba. The boba mix is actually from Sam's Club. I highly recommend. I don't know if they still sell it because we bought it a long time ago, but for Sam's Club, it's really good. So, hi friends. I am really excited to film today's video because this is my first time filming a monthly, this is what I read in 1 month video, because as you just saw, we did a year-long 2022 books in review, which I still will probably do for 2023 with Caleb at the end of the year, but getting to sit down and talk about which books I read in a month in more depth, I feel like will be fun because now I'm not at a time constraint. Like I can talk about these few books for as long as I want because it's all just for one video. Also, I have my little friend here that we just got from Five Below. Look how cute he is. I wanted him in the video with me, so he's chilling right there. I don't think I'm gonna start doing these videos every month because I am notorious for getting into reading slumps. It won't be every month where I have enough books where I feel like I can talk about in one video. I'm only gonna do this when I feel like I had a really good reading month. And it so happened to be that the first month of the year, January, was a really great reading month. So that's what we're gonna talk about today. So I read 5 books this month, which is crazy because literally my goal last year was to read 12 books the whole year. And now I read 5 books in 1 month. I only have 4 books with me right now because one of them I borrowed from my friend Jenna, but I'm gonna talk about that book too, don't worry. I'm gonna go in order in which I read these books this month. We have an interesting variety here. I feel like I definitely mixed up my genres this month, so I'm excited to talk about these. I have my journal here for reference because yesterday I took the time to write little book reviews in my journal, and I felt so much like Haley Pham doing this because I know she prints out little book covers to put in her journal, so I did that too. First book. This was such a great way to start my month of reading for January. I cannot recommend this book enough. This is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by, I'm gonna try my best to not butcher this, Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This book was actually recommended to me by a friend, Amy. If you're watching this, thank you so much for bringing this book into my life because I'm gonna go ahead and give the rating because it's obvious what I think of this book. It is a 5-star read, and let me tell you why. So this is a magical realism book. I've only ever read one other magical realism book before, and that was The Midnight Library. Spoiler, I hated that book. I talked about that in my last video. Didn't hate it necessarily. I just had higher expectations for it than what it provided for me. So this is the second magical realism book I've ever read. This book is somehow able to do world building in a way that is both simple yet complex at the same time, while still giving the feel of magic but also feeling very human and real at the same time. So obviously lots of juxtaposition and things that contradict, but it just melds beautifully together into this one book. Premise of this book is that it is a coffee shop, and you can go in and basically you can go travel back in time to see somebody who has also visited that cafe before. So in order to see them, they have to have been in that cafe in the past, and you have to know exactly when they had been there before. The way you do it is you sit at this certain table, and then you get a cup of coffee, and the rule is you only have a certain amount of time, and you have until before the coffee gets cold. Sorry, that was hard to explain without spoiling. I'll cut out anything that I think was too much to explain. And the way this book is, it is kind of a bunch of short stories, but all these characters are still connected with each other. They all know each other. It's all in one little community basically, but it's in different stories that portray different types of relationships. So lovers, husband and wife, sisters, and mother and child. And with that warning, this book will probably make you pretty emotional. I definitely did. I think I cried 2 or 3 times reading this. It's hard not to get emotional with these types of stories, because obviously the whole point is they're gonna have some kind of lesson involved with basically chances and relationships and how time is a gift, and it just has a lot of good themes. It was just really well written, fast paced. I mean, literally it's such a short book. I finished this I think in like 2 or 3 days. It's just so good. I cannot recommend it enough. 5 out of 5 stars before the coffee gets cold. Great way to start my reading year. All right, and next, this book right here. This book right here. If I had to pick one rom-com high school book that I had to read for the rest of my life, like that was the only book I was allowed to reread ever, or read ever in that very specific genre, it would be this one. This, I'm holding it upside down. I mean, it truly felt like I was watching a movie, and hence the title. This is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. The characters were automatically so lovable. Just really, really loved the main character. Like, I grew really attached to her within the first few chapters, and I think it's because Lynn Painter does such a good job of adding so much depth to her characters. They're not just these like surface level characters, and obviously with rom-coms, like you already know kind of what's gonna happen at the end. This book still had me on the edge of my seat wondering how exactly it was gonna happen in the end. So really good sign that a rom-com is good, to me at least. To explain the plot in a few words. This girl named Liz, she's in high school. Her personality basically revolves around romance movies and rom-com movies. And it's because her mother, that was a big part of her personality, and she grew up like always watching stuff like When Harry Met Sally and The Bridget Jones Diary. She just grew up within that movie culture basically. She basically goes throughout her whole entire like childhood to middle school to high school like always dreaming of having that like movie love. The love that you only really see in the movies. She's basically a hopeless romantic, to sum that up. Even in high school, she's waiting for her Prince Charming. She's waiting for the love of her life. And this childhood friend that she has known, who moved away when she was younger, is back in town, and she sees it as her movie sign. Like, okay, there it is. Let's work towards it. And she has help from her best friend. Actually, he's not her friend. He's her enemy. I wonder what trope is going on over here. He tries to help her basically create this movie magic moment slash trope for her so that she can end up going to prom with the childhood crush. You can probably see where it's going. The chemistry was all there. The banter was so good in this book. Like, I felt giddy reading the conversations in this book. And I will leave my last comment about this book with this. The vibe at the end of the day is honestly what gives this book a 5 out of 5. All the movie references, all the music references, it truly made it feel like you were watching a movie, like a fun movie. Like, think of like To All the Boys I've Loved Before, honestly. Like that aesthetic and vibe. And it was so fun to like literally be put into Liz's world while reading this. I read this book because Haley Pham recommended it, and I'm so glad I did. She always talks about this book. I think she has claimed it to be her favorite rom-com of all time, and so far I think this might be my favorite rom-com of all time. Better Than the Movies, Lynn Painter. Also, I think she just announced there's gonna be a sequel to this book. Looking very forward to that. I think it's gonna come out in like 2024 though, so it'll be a long time from now, but that'll be exciting. Second book of January, 5 out of 5. All right, next book is the one I don't have, but I have it printed out in here. And it is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. This book was lent to me by my friend Jenna. I read all of John Green's books in like middle school and high school, and it had been so long since I had opened up one of his books. And I had always wanted to read Turtles All the Way Down since it came out. It's been out since 2017. Read it, I don't know why, I just never picked it up, but I finally read it. And I'm so glad I did, because it was a very enjoyable read. I gave that one a 4 out of 5. Paul's the main character. She is in high school, and she is facing OCD and anxiety, and it kind of just takes you through her like internal thoughts and what it's like to be a high schooler facing those mental health problems. And also on top of that is the plot of a mystery, and those, like, everything combined with the main character and the plot going on and who she meets along the way, it just made for a really unique and interesting plot. But yeah, the mystery in the plot, there is this rich guy who is missing, and her best friend are trying to get down to the bottom of it, and they befriend the son of the rich guy who is missing. There are a lot of twists and turns, and he does a really good job of, 1, making the book really hooking, 2, making the book not super predictable, and 3, making the book also not super drawn out and repetitive. It was a really quick read, and I liked that about it because there wasn't really more that needed to be said. Like, if there were more to it, it probably just would have been really drawn out and repetitive. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5, and for one reason only. I wish a specific part of the book, I can't really talk about why I gave it a 4 out of 5 without spoiling it. Basically, I wish they would have just given a little bit more build up to a certain moment. So Turtles All the Way Down by John Green, 4 out of 5. All right, we have the last 2 books of January. I'm gonna talk about these 2 together because they are 2 books out of 3 in a series, and they are these books. This is the Tita Rosie's Kitchen Mystery Series, and I actually checked these out from the library. Me and Caleb finally got our library cards, as you saw in a previous video. So these were the first books I had checked out, and I was really, really excited to read them. I literally dropped my whole TBR so I could read these books. I thought I was gonna read all 3 in a row, but I decided just to read the first 2, and then I'll get back to the 3rd book eventually. And one being, they weren't as good as I thought they were gonna be, but they're still good, so just hang on right here. 2 being, I love series, but sometimes I don't like reading them right away back to back from each other because I get tired of like being in that same fictional world for too long. I mean, the same thing happened with me to Chaos Walking. Like, I read the first book of Chaos Walking, and then it took me, I can't remember, it took me like at least a year to get to the 2nd and 3rd book of the series. So, but the first book in the series is right here, Arsenic and Adobo. This book is by Mia Manansala, and she writes about the main character, Lila Macapagal, and they live in the suburbs of Illinois, and she's Filipino American, moves from Chicago from her like big city job to Shady Palms, where her family all is and where she grew up, and she's trying to help her Tita Rosie and her Filipino restaurant basically. And it all unravels from there because in like this is in the summary, so not a spoiler, her ex-boyfriend, who is a food critic, comes to the restaurant to do a review, eats the food there, and then dies from poisoning. And no one knows what happened, and that is the mystery of the book. So, interesting plot. As soon as I like read the back and was like, oh, I was automatically intrigued. But this is a cozy mystery, so it's not scary. And I think that's as far as I'll ever be able to go when it comes to mystery, because I don't like unease. I wanted to read this book because it was a Filipino American series. This is my first time, I believe, reading a book written by a Filipino, so that was also just really heartwarming to get to do. There was just so much familiarity when it came to her talking about what it was like to be a Filipino American in this book, just with like all the aunties like gossiping and chismes and the foods that they were making, and just I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5. I marked down a point because this feels a little drawn out at some points. There's 295 pages. I feel like it didn't need all those 295 pages, but I will say I enjoyed the reveal at the end. I enjoyed finding out who it was. I liked it a lot. I recommend reading it. And then we have the second book. This is Homicide in Halo Halo. Also, if you don't know, adobo is a Filipino chicken dish, and then halo halo is a Filipino dessert dish. So she has this trend of like putting food in the titles, and it's because in these books, since it's like in the environment and setting of a restaurant, and also Lila herself is a like master baker and she's like really good at what she does, they're always talking about like food in like very descriptive ways, and it literally made me hungry reading this. Like, I was just thinking of all the foods that I would usually eat when I was at home. So Homicide in Halo Halo, I'll be quick with this one. The plot wasn't as good to me. It didn't feel as connected to the main characters as the first one did. Like, I feel like it just wasn't, it was still connected with her family, but it wasn't as good as this one to me. Like, the plot seemed just nah to me. And the plot of this one is that she's the judge of a local pageant. Pageants are a big thing in Filipino culture, so I'm not surprised that she's decided to pick that as a major theme of this book. And one of the pageant judges dies, and that's the mystery. They're trying to figure out who did it. There's just way too many characters. Like, I feel like every chapter we learned like 3 new character names, and I kept like having to go back to like figure out if I had met them already or not, and like remember what their relevance was. So that was a bit much. 2, this first book did a really good job, I think, of presenting Lila's friendships and her potential relationships. And they like made these great characters in the first book to really not go more in depth in the second book with them. Like, I feel like the side characters in this book were put on the back burner for the second book. And like, I get it, it's a new book, it's a new plot, but all these side characters are still in this book. and they were just like no character arcs for them. You're only getting to really see character arcs with the main character, which is a bit annoying because why would you introduce all these characters to not even like talk about them? I ended up giving this a 3 to 5 because I still got through it. I still really liked the vibe of the book. The reveal wasn't that suspenseful to me. It was shocking at least, like I didn't predict it. So that's why I still gave it a 3 out of 5 and not lower than that. But they didn't add that much suspense to it, so I wasn't really like, whoa. It was just more like, oh, you know? So yeah, that was a 3 out of 5. Those were the books I read in January. Really proud of myself for getting through 5 books this month. I have no idea how many I'll end up reading in February. I have some exciting books that I'm reading though, so I know I want to talk about them eventually. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching and just listening to me ramble about these books. And if you have any book recommendations for me, please put them in the comments below. I would love to get to them and check them out eventually. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you again for watching. I'll catch you guys in another place of the internet. Make sure to follow me on TikTok and Instagram. I like to post lots of book content on there too, and just other life content things as well. So yeah, until next time, see you in the next video.